Hi, welcome to Moments with Marilyn. I'm your host, Marilyn Boyer, mom of 14 homeschool kids. And it's my privilege and my passion to share with you tips and tools to make your journey easier. We homeschooled our kids for 37 years, academic part, as far as parenting, longer than that, but the academic part was 37 years. And I learned a lot of things along the way. You know, I did a lot of things wrong, I did a lot of things right. But it's my passion to share that with you so that hopefully you can learn from our mistakes. Okay, so today I'm answering a question. A couple weeks ago we did a podcast on a sample daily schedule if you have only little kids, and we dealt with that. But I had several people ask me, well, what if you have multiple ages? Can you share a sample daily schedule for that? So that's what we're going to attempt to do today. And of course, it varies depending on the ages of your kids, your husband's schedule, whether you have sickness, morning sickness, whatever. But I'm going to share one that worked for us for a number of years. It's very simplified, but I hope it helps. And you have to adjust things as things happen. And sometimes you've got a really active toddler who kind of throws a monkey wrench into your plans. That's happened to me many times. But a year, if you've got a really hyperactive toddler who seems to be distracting and making noise all the time, a year makes a huge difference. So sometimes you just have to grin and bear it and do your best till the following year. So this is roughly, and very roughly, what we would do. As I said in the other podcast, I was not an early riser. I figured out I was pregnant over 11 years, if you include all the pregnancies, and I seem to always have a nursing baby and a toddler, and when that happens, you're up nights a lot. So I was not an early riser. I've never been an early riser, but especially raising my kids, I was not an early riser. So I would get up generally around 7:30 in the morning, and I would let the kids wake up as they would. I wouldn't say, okay, time for everybody to get out of bed. I just, if a baby slept longer, I always said, never wake a sleeping baby unless absolutely necessary. So we'd get up, breakfast would be roughly around 8 o'clock, and I would try to do something very easy for breakfast, like granola with fruit in it, or oatmeal or cream of wheat we did for a number of years, or yogurt, breakfast breads, muffins. And in my book, Homemade with Love, my recipe book, I've got a lot of recipes for easy muffins and easy breakfast breads and things that it's easy just to warm up. If you want your kids to have something warm, muffins are great, a great way to fill that need. I would just make up batches of muffin mix, put it in the refrigerator, and in the morning I'd just scoop it into the muffin tins and bake it. And voila, you've got breakfast. Add a little fruit and some milk, and there's a ready-made breakfast for the kids. I did not do big breakfasts every day, eggs and bacon and all that. It just didn't work with a lot of kids, and homeschooling them, we needed to do something fast and easy and get right into it. I also found when you're homeschooling your kids, you can't get up and put in a load of laundry and do this little cleaning job in the house. When you are doing school time with your kids, you need to be there with them. Whenever you get up and you go to another room, the kids get distracted, you kind of lose your momentum. So I would try to put in a load of laundry before we started school. And then later in the afternoon, I'd finish laundry and put in more loads and all that. We always had a lot of laundry. But to try to get up and do that in the middle of school did not work. I remember one day I was pregnant and feeling kind of tired, and I went and I sat on the couch, and we had been at the table doing our schoolwork, and one by one the kids drifted into the other room because they want to be near mom. And you have to be there to keep the momentum going. It's not, especially when the kids are young. When you've got young ones, you can't say, go do this. You have to be there to keep it going and keep them motivated and keep them on track. Some are so distractible. I had a couple of kids that were very well-intentioned, but they were so distractible. And if you were not there to keep them on track, they were off somewhere else, in their mind anyway. So we'd put in a load of laundry, and I would also have the kids pick up clutter. Now, We would do that the night before, but generally if the kids are up and mulling about for an hour in the morning before you start school, there's going to be some stuff out. They're going to have taken out some things. So about 8:45 to 9, I would have the older kids pick up clutter and just, put things away, because for me it was a distraction if your house just has stuff everywhere. So we would just try to pick up the clutter and get it kind of neat looking. But while the kids were doing that, I would spend 15 minutes with the preschoolers. And this is key. What I would do, there were 3 key times during the morning that I spent time with my preschoolers. And they knew that they were going to have mom's undivided attention during those 15-minute periods, 10 or 15-minute periods, 3 times in the morning. So virtually I was spending like 30 to 45 minutes in the morning with the preschoolers, specifically only the preschoolers. And they looked forward to that time. So I'll tell you what I did with them the rest of the time, but they knew that they were going to have mom's undivided while the other kids were picking up the house. And during that time, I generally would read a character book with them, and we'd talk about the character quality we were studying, obedience or honesty or diligence, whichever one we happened to be on. And we would talk about that and read the stories. And if you are looking for a book, we've written Crossroads of Character, which is specifically for preschoolers, and it teaches 12 basic character qualities. And kids seem to really love it, turn on to it. It gives simple, kid-friendly definitions and Bible verses for the kids to learn. So to teach them Bible verses, I would just say the verse and have them repeat it back to me. If they're really little, say a couple words at a time and have them repeat the couple words back to work through it. But they knew that they were going to have mom's undivided for this 15-minute period. Then around 9 o'clock, we would do school time. And I often felt like I was the juggler. I always felt like I was the juggler. I was trying to get this child doing this child doing this, and trying to keep it all together. And I felt like I was kind of milling around. What I would generally do is the preschoolers would be in the kitchen, on the kitchen table, doing their preschool projects, which I will explain in a minute. The kids that were writing would sit in the dining room at the table so that they could sit up straight and do their writing and write neatly. And the kids that were reading would be in the living room. And I would kind of go around and keep things going. Now, we did not all do reading at the same time or all do handwriting at the same time. I would juggle it so that while one was doing their handwriting, someone might be doing handwriting, somebody might be reading history, while I was doing math with somebody who needed my attention. The ones that you're teaching to read, teaching phonics, and math seem to take the most of mom time. They need you right there explaining the concept and doing it with them. So while I was doing that with one, the others would be doing their history or their handwriting or reading science or something where they did not need my direct attention. And I would try to juggle that time out. Now, there were some down times where somebody had finished their history and they were waiting for me to come help them with math. And they might just have to sit there and wait, or they could read in their geography book or whatever. I would generally have something that they could do while they were waiting, something else for them to work on. But they might have to wait until I was available to help them with their math. As I say again, juggle, juggle, juggle. That's what I felt like for so many years. But I also found, like when you're having your kids do handwriting, have them do something worthwhile. Instead of just learning to write the letters, like my girls, I would let them write recipe cards, and so that they could have them for future use when they started their own homes. And they wanted that to look neat. Or some of the kids, you could have them do like ancestry work. They could write down ancestry. Like we are related to William Bradford, and if you study the ancestry, it's so interesting. And they would like to have a record of this. So it's something they care about. Let them do that instead of a handwriting exercise in a book. Or if they are doing a handwriting exercise in a book, writing a Bible verse, for instance, let them give it to a shut-in or an elderly person who might hang it on the refrigerator or send it to grandma. something that's going to be used instead of just doing an exercise that's going to be thrown away or stuffed in a book and forgotten about. And that takes some planning, on mom's part to come up with something that's useful. But if you see what they are passionate about, let them use that for handwriting. Or if it's a son, writing the steps for changing the oil or, whatever. Try to find something that they like doing and let them write that for handwriting. Okay, so at this time, while the older ones are doing schoolwork, and I am pretty much spending my time with them, the young ones, if they're very young, like toddlers, they can be playing on the floor with Fisher-Price sets or or toys. I would teach them to use school voices, which means the volume of their voice had to be slow. They couldn't be yelling at the top of their lungs. They had to talk quietly, so they were not a distraction to the other kids. There's going to be some distraction, and everybody needs to learn to work with some degree of distraction. So that's just kind of how it is. If somebody really needs to concentrate on something difficult that they're reading or whatever, sometimes I would let them go to another room in the house to do their reading. But I generally like to keep them in the 3 rooms that I could rotate around and check on them. Okay, during this time, I would let my preschoolers work on preschool projects. And I know I explained this a little bit 2 weeks ago, but I would have certain projects that I would prepare in the summertime. We would keep them in a special box or a special closet, and this was the preschooler school. And they could only do this during school time, so it was their school. And they really looked forward to it. Things like lacing and tracing shapes. I would have a lot of things in this box or in this closet. And I would try to rotate them often before they got tired of one activity. We'd say, okay, we're going to put that away now and let's get out a different activity, so that they would look forward to doing it the next time. Things like special puzzles that we kept just for school time. They can actually learn so much from puzzles. And it depends on the age of the child too, whether it's like little peg puzzles or floor puzzles, whatever their skill level is. But just save those things for school time. Flannel graph books, Play-Doh. Play-Doh, I know, makes a certain degree of mess, but I would put a plastic sheet down and then put the little kid table over that and let the kids play with Play-Doh. I made my own Play-Doh, and it was very non-crumbly. We had molds so that the kids could make cows or cakes if they were little girls, and they would play with Play-Doh for a long time. It really did hold their attention. They had little plastic knives. They could cut rolls and things, and my kids loved Play-Doh. And sometimes that was a motivation for the middle-aged kids. Your 2nd and 3rd graders, they want to play Play-Doh too. So if they can get their math done in good time, you give them a few minutes to go play Play-Doh with the preschoolers too. Or things like block sets or peg play, counting and sorting M&Ms or raisins. You can let them count like the M&Ms by color and then count them by number, and then maybe they can eat them for a snack. Shape sorters, color sorters, dry erase boards and markers. They love doing that. Stickers. Oh, the little guys love stickers. So I always kept a huge supply of stickers and gave them a sheet of paper and let them put the stickers down however they wanted. Magnetic chalk and letter boards. Family dolls. Paper dolls was the idea, but paper dolls didn't last long in our family. So one year my son made wooden dolls for his younger sister, and he put pictures of the family on these wooden dolls, and she would play with them and act out situations in the family. So much fun. I think she still has them for her kids. Sticker books, preschool workbooks. One of the things my kids loved to do in the summer, I would cut out shapes from construction paper, circles, squares, triangles, rectangles, trapezoids, and then give the kids glue sticks and let them paste the shapes down on paper in any pattern that they chose, and they loved doing that. Outlining simple shapes, simple dot-to-dot books. Audiobooks. Now, we did do audiobooks for our kids, and kids can learn history. We've got a bunch of those on our website if you're interested. Little kids love them as well as older kids, and they can learn so much history. It's amazing. I hear my 5-year-old grandson talk about Ethan Allen and George Rogers Clark. I mean, he knows these people just from listening to audiobooks. So make use of them. You can even get little headset, and they feel like they're pretty big having their headset. Get them a little Walkman with a headset and let them listen to history. You might even want to schedule in some history time for the preschoolers, sometime when the older kids are doing school. Videos we very seldom use, but there's a set called Farming for Kids, which was a great series. There's 4 of them: dairy farming, apple farming, vegetable farming, and citrus farming. And my kids love them, especially like if they're have a sick day or something. Those came in really handy for that. Or another video that we used was the Hide 'em in Your Heart, the old Steve Green Hide 'em in Your Heart video, and the kids are learning scripture songs. And occasionally would watch a Moody Science. Sometimes we'd fold laundry together and watch a Moody Science video. But you want to steer clear of doing too much electronics. It's too easy just to put your kids in front of an iPad and let them go, where it's harder to do these other things, but it's so much more creative. It stimulates their brain so much more than just sitting in front of a device. And the key to those preschool projects is change them often. Change them out. Have them in a big box or a closet and change them. It only takes a few minutes for you to go put this away and get something else out. So that's what the preschoolers were doing while I was doing school with the others. Then about 10:15 to 10:30 would be snack break for the older kids. So they could stop their school and get a little snack to keep them going in the morning. While they were snacking, I'd have a prepared snack so they could go eat their snack, and I would spend another 15 minutes with the preschoolers, actually training them, reading a character book or leading little ones to God, that book that we have that teaches kids simple Bible doctrine. Very simple selections. You can do it in maybe 5 minutes, and then there's some questions to ask them. But it teaches them things like, who is God? Who is Jesus? What is sin? Why do I need to confess my sin? What's the Holy Spirit? Why do we need to go to church? I mean, just all this basic doctrine. And it's important to teach that to your kids. Or you might want to do like the Westminster, what's it called? You know what I mean? The Westminster Confession. That's questions that you ask your kids. But this leading little ones to God has very simple passages, and my kids loved it. We would do that every day during that time. So again, there you've got 15 minutes you're spending with your preschoolers, and they've got mom's undivided attention. And they know, if they get kind of restless while you're doing school with the others, you remind them, hey, when it's snack time for your older brothers and sisters, mom's going to do leading little ones with you. And then after, when we got the older kids back to do school with them, I would give the little ones their snack. Okay, then we would do school time again until about noon. And let me just say, I've done a whole podcast on this, but beware, so many of the textbooks, any textbook really, gives your kids way too much to do, way too many problems. Math, for instance. So learn to cut down on the busy work. If they've got 30 math problems, circle 10 and let them do 10. Actually doing less is better because the kids see an end to it. They will discipline themselves more to buckle down and learn it. They know when I do these 10 problems, I'm done with math for today. Instead of sitting there with a page of 30 or 40 problems and thinking, I am never going to finish this. And they'll just kind of drag their feet and sit there forever. If you give them less, it's better. You want to teach them all the concepts. You don't want to leave out any concepts, but you want to cut down on the busy work. Because curriculums were not made so much for homeschoolers, but for classrooms, and there's way too many problems. And as you become more skilled, the more years that you do it, you will see that it's not necessary to do everything that's in the books. Just cut down the amount, not the concepts. And then also, you might want to learn to replace some of the subjects with areas of interest for your kids. And this is a big one. You know, if you've got a boy who's just so interested in car mechanics, it's okay to get a book on car mechanics and replace um, matter and motion science with car mechanics. You know, let them do something they're passionate about, they're interested in. That can be a school subject. If it's something they're interested in, they're going to apply themselves. So don't feel like you've got to stick by what the government schools do. You have the freedom to pick and choose. And again, I have another podcast on that if you want more information about that. It's been amazing to learn to do that. I did not start out that way, but the last part of my kids, I taught them that way, and it made so much more sense to kind of gear it toward what their area of interest was. My youngest child, the day she graduated from high school, she got her private pilot's license, and she is a pilot. And she knew she wanted to do that. Sometimes you've got kids that don't know what they want to do, and then you've got to expose them to different things. But if they know that they want to do, if they want to be a vet, let them get books for science on animal anatomy and learn to be a vet when they're in high school. Start learning to be a vet when they're in high school. It makes so much sense. It also helped for me to do history with several ages at once. Sometimes, if depending on the age of the kids and how we could work it out, sometimes we would do history together. And The Fight for Freedom is a book we recently wrote for Master Books, and it's about the War of Independence. But it's story format. It's the people from that time period, stories of real people. People like George Washington, Ben Franklin, Caesar Rodney, Benjamin Rush, Daniel Morgan, Francis Marion, George Rogers Clark, John Hancock, Lydia Dara, Nathan Hale, Patrick Henry, Sam Adams, Colonel William Moultrie, some of the preachers of the Revolution, some of the Black Patriots. It's so much more, it sticks with them so much more if history is done in story form. And we could do this with several age groups together. This is written for grades 4 through 6. So you could do it together. You could have them read it on their own, or you could read it together as a family. Even younger kids would love listening, even if they couldn't handle reading it themselves. So you can kind of adapt that. You know, you could, like after lunch maybe, you might want to sit down and read history together as a family. You know, having so many kids, I would do things like that often instead of everybody at their own history book for 4th, 5th, 6th grade. We kind of combine and do it together. Made things a little bit easier. Okay, then at noon, also some of the middle kids would want to do some of the preschool projects. So we kind of use that as motivation. If you can finish your math, then you can have a few minutes to do Play-Doh or outlining shapes or whatever. So that can be a motivation. Okay, then at noon, the older kids, I would have them make lunch. We'd do simple things like sandwiches or soup that was already made, warm it up. And I would spend another 10 or 15 minutes with my preschoolers. And usually at this point, I would read them a Bible storybook. We'd work through a Bible storybook, like the Picture Bible. We had many different Bible storybooks during the years. But I wanted them to go through the stories of the Bible in order to learn about all those Old Testament and New Testament stories. So that's what I would do with the preschoolers for that 15 minutes. Then we'd all have lunch together and clean up. And at 1 o'clock is when we would do nap time for the little ones. I would, as I said 2 weeks ago, I would put them down, spend 5 minutes with them individually, but then they would all go down for a nap. The older kids during this time are doing their chores from about 1 to 1:45 maybe would be their chore time. And we assigned chores. Certain days of the week, certain kids had certain chores. And in the summer, I would assign that. I would write down all the chores. I'd say, who is best able to do this chore for the school year? And in the summer, I'd train them to do that chore. So if it's Tuesday and it's dusting, Kate knew dusting was her chore on Tuesday. So this is when they would do their chores. If it wasn't like cleaning up after supper or whatever, the basic chores were done during this time in the afternoon. And then for the rest of nap time, the younger ones would nap till about 2:30. The younger ones were also listening to their Bible CDs as they went down for their nap, and they were learning to meditate on Scripture during that time. So we were making use of that nap time and before nap time. And if they woke up a little earlier than 2:30, I'd let them lay there and listen to their CDs as well. So that the older ones, when they're done with their chores, then would be their devotional time. Unless they got up earlier than the rest of the family and did their devotions first. I had some that would do that, and that's wonderful. But if they haven't done their devotions, that's the time that they would fit that in. And then at 2:30, the kids would get up, and the little guys would have playtime. Also, if we had special projects we were working on, or appointments, or errand time, or we were ministering, visiting the elderly, we would do that during this time. I would also continue doing laundry. I would do cooking. If the older kids had a business that they were running, this is when they would work on that. Or if they had extra things they needed to read because they were in high school and they needed to get into some extra reading time, this is when they would do that. If they were taking piano lessons, it would be during this time. If they had to practice the piano, it would be during this time. When the little ones weren't napping, the little ones were out playing. I love to get my little ones out as much as possible. So a lot of things were fit in during that time in the afternoon. Along about 4:30 or 5, we would pick up the clutter again before supper, before Dad comes home. We'd just take a few minutes and everyone pick up. Then supper, we'd vary. Sometimes it was 5, sometimes it was 6. More generally like 6 o'clock. We would have supper and clean up after supper. Then family time between 7 and 7:30. And we would do some kind of family devotions together most nights, unless it was a church night or if we had company or whatever. Bedtimes varied with the ages of the kids. When I put my little ones down, I'd go in and pray with each one, the little ones, and talk a little bit about their day. The older kids obviously didn't go down at 7:30, but that's when they would work on ministry or work if they had their own business or whatever, or fellowship. They might have a friend over or do extra reading. There's a lot of wiggle time in here, as you can see, where they could fit in extra things for them to do, depending on where they were at their stage in life. And then often after the little ones went to bed is time that I would spend either with Rick or with the older ones. If they had something on their mind, many of my best talks with my older ones was late at night after everyone else was asleep. They would kind of hang around and would talk about what was on their mind. So I hope that helps. I mean, it's very hard to give a schedule because it changed constantly, but this is a rough schedule, and I hope that you find that helpful. The Character Concepts for Preschoolers Mom's Guide has a lot of preschool projects. It has a lot of coloring pages and stories to teach the preschoolers, some Bible stories in there, some nature projects, some seasonal things. Even if you're not doing it as a curriculum, you would find a lot of helpful things in here, things that you can just pick up and do with your little kids and read to them. There's colored Bible stories in there to go with the character quality you're teaching. So you might find a lot of helpful things in there. So I hope that's been helpful. I'd love to hear your comments. And as always, if you've got a topic you would like to hear me address, I'd love to hear it. And if I can, I will try to address that. Thanks for joining us today. See you next time.